All right, what's going on, everybody? Hope everyone's doing well. For those that are new to the Adult Day Pro webinar, we appreciate you joining us today. It typically takes about three to 5 minutes for everyone to kind of work their way in, get on the links and stuff like that. So, for those that are new, my name's Kris Channa, the founder of ActivAge. I also have Christina Blasic on the with us today, another fellow Adult Day expert. And we are gonna, be with you for the remainder of this call. We'll do a little live Q&A. If you've been here before, you kind of know the routine. We typically will start out and we'll give everyone a few minutes, to introduce themselves. So really for the first, let's call it 5 to 10 minutes of this call, what we'll do is, we'll have everyone kind of volunteer or whoever would like to, introduce themselves, share where you are in this journey, whether you're just starting out, you're thinking about opening an adult day center, or maybe you're already in the process and you've found a building and you're going through the discovery phase of starting your own adult day center, and you just are here to learn. So either way, just share with us where you're at in the journey, where you're from, what part of the country you're from, and we'll just do rapid fire around that way, and then we'll get into the Q&A in about 10 minutes. So we always encourage everyone, and it's so funny because for whatever reason, Christina knows we get on these calls and just a handful of people put their questions into the comment section. And then about 10 minutes into it, all of a sudden the questions just start flowing. So if you already have a question that you would like to ask either myself or Christina, make sure you put that in the comment section, because we'll use that chat section to answer your question. So we'll go down, one by one, the first person who asked the question down through the line there to answer them. So if you're the first one to put your question in, there's a better chance that we're going to get to you and answer any questions that you guys might have. So make sure you do that now. Take the time. If you got that burning question, put it in the chat box. Don't be afraid. It's a safe place. We're all here to learn. And what's cool is everyone's in a different stage in their journey. And so the best part about this is that we can learn from each other. Some people might be facing challenges that that you're kind of going through and you didn't even know it, and maybe you guys can connect after this call and share stories together. But at least while you're here, we'll hopefully be able to answer some of these questions for you. So that being said, guys, I guess whoever wants to start first to introduce yourself. Again, this is not the Q&A section. This first 5 to 10 minutes, this will just be what's your name, where you're from, and what stage of this journey you're in. So feel free to go ahead, whoever wants to go first.
I will say something first. If you don't want to jump on and say who you are, throw your name and where you're from in the chat box. And, you may have people in your state on here. And, maybe you guys can become friends and help work through your centers together. So, that's always an option too. So,
Absolutely. No, and it's nice because sometimes, and it's funny, we'll get different calls, and it seems like we'll have some calls that are like more people are from Georgia, or more people are from New Jersey or the Northeast, or more people are from Florida. So it's always funny how every
right.
call is a little different. So, but
Absolutely.
if you want to unmute yourself, it's funny. Everyone's always shy the first time. So anyone want to unmute themselves, share where they're from?
Sure. Hi, my name is Fanta, and I'm from Georgia.
All
Hi.
right. See another Georgia gal. So what stage of the journey are you in?
I'm in the beginning stages. I'm looking for a building.
Okay.
Yeah, so my whole thing is I just want to find somewhere that I don't have to put a lot of money into. So I want something that's already, framed and almost ready to go, not turnkey, but almost ready to go.
Well, Fanta, it sounds like honestly your question would be very helpful. So if you have questions around that topic, definitely put it in the chat if you haven't already, because you're at a stage where a lot of people on this call might be, and and there's a lot to learn from this particular stage you're at. So thanks for sharing. Appreciate you coming on and introducing yourself. So we look forward to getting into maybe the details of your situation on this call. Who else might want to introduce themselves?
Hi, I will. Hi, I'm Ashley Scott, and I'm from Kansas City, Kansas. I am actually in the beginning stages as well.
All right, Ashley, are you looking for a property at this point, or are you just kind of in that discovery phase, learning more about the business?
Looking for property.
Okay, fantastic. See, look at that. Ashley and Fanta, like, you guys are in a similar stage. So hopefully we can help you out in this call, and then beyond this call, you guys could connect together, So anyone else want to jump on real quick and introduce themselves?
Yeah,
Hi.
sure. Hi, Kris. This is Danielle Trapani. I live in Bentonville, Arkansas, and I am in the discovery phase right now.
Oh, fantastic. You're like, that's like, isn't that like the capital of Walmart?
Indeed.
All right. All right. Well, Danielle, thanks for joining us on the call.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Yeah, if you have any questions too, Danielle, feel free to share them, in the chat box there. Anyone else want to jump in and introduce themselves real quick? Maybe we'll have time for like 2 or 3 more people.
I'll go.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Mindy Whelan. Christina was my consultant back when we opened up a year ago.
Oh, wow.
So
Fantastic.
we've got our building where our doors are open and just logging on to see what else I can learn.
Well, Mindy, I think honestly, I love, working with adult day owners, especially that have opened and they're in this kind of early stage. So any specific questions you want to throw in the chat box that we can help you with, you're at a stage of the journey that is exciting, and there's a lot to learn, and probably a lot of things that we could do to help you along the way. So
Very
definitely
much
feel
so.
free to throw your questions in the chat, and and I'm so excited that you got to work with Christina. She's amazing, and that's fantastic that you had the opportunity to spend time with her too. So
Yeah.
all right, anyone else? We'll do maybe. Or go ahead, Christina. Sorry.
No, I just was saying hi to Mindy. So I'm excited to see her on here.
That's awesome. I love it when that early stage adult day owners or operators are on these calls. It makes for even more interesting conversation. So
Right.
anyone else want to introduce themselves?
Hey everyone, I know Christina as well. My name is Jeffrey. I'm with the Elder Club here in Port Richey, Florida. I've known Chris as well. I actually went to his grand opening. It's a beautiful, beautiful center that he has. So I'm really grateful to be here and really grateful to learn as much as I can. And we're in the early stages as well in terms of we just opened the building and we're currently working to get our Medicaid license. So very exciting.
Awesome, Jeffrey. Hey, if you got questions on here, man, you'd be another good one that would have some really helpful questions that could probably help other people. So throw it in the chat for sure. I will do one more person if they want to introduce themselves. Look, Christina, you got a whole fan club here today.
I do. I know. I have three people on here I know that I have worked with. So hi,
That's fantastic.
Jeffrey. And hi, Cherie.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I know. I'm so excited.
All right, maybe one more person, then we'll jump into the live Q&A. Or maybe not.
Okay.
I guess everyone's done. All right. So, and excuse my outfit today. We had our Roaring 20s Great Gatsby party today. So the team and I everyone was all dressed up. I took my hat off, but this is the remaining part of my outfit, or my costume, whatever you want to call it. It was a fun day though. We had a good time. The Great Gatsby party, the Roaring 20s is always just a fun way to celebrate the Roaring 20s and get your members engaged in something creative. And it's always cool when the team dresses up and everyone walks in the door and is looking good. So it was a good day here at ActivAge, but we'll jump right into it. The beautiful part about it, Christina does a great job at helping managing the chat box as we go through this. And then, we'll try to answer your questions. We'll give everyone about 5 to 7 minutes as we go through it. If we can dive deeper and we think it'll help more people, we might dive a little bit deeper on each, someone else's question. But I guess we can go ahead and get started, Christina. Let's see who's up first.
I think Sharonda.
I'm just pulling up my chat box here. All right,
Hello.
Sharonda. Hello, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here. Hi, guys. I'm calling from Georgia. I'm in the renovation tear down stage
All
right
right,
now.
girl. Exciting, exciting. That's the fun part.
Yeah, it is a fun part. So right now, I'm kind of my question is going towards insurance carriers for liability insurance for the center. Kind of having a difficult time finding reasonable rates, I guess you can say, or carriers to even understand what we're doing.
Well, Sharonda, I can certainly share, my contact, the insurance provider we use. He specializes in like kind of the senior care space. So he does a lot of adult day, in-home care and assisted living are kind of his, core service lines. So I'll be more than happy to, share his contact information, with you at some point in time when Christina's talking. I can pull it up and throw it in the chat here as well. What are some of the quotes you've gotten? What size center do you have? What's your square footage and maybe your
My
anticipated occupancy?
Well, my square footage is like 4,000 square feet
Okay.
of space. So we're looking at, I'm not really sure exactly how many people. I don't want to overload, but
Yeah, you could probably be around 50 people. I mean, that you could get
exactly.
licensed for. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
have you, what are some of the quotes you've received? Do you have any, examples of maybe where you're at with some of the quotes you've received?
Right now I'm like around almost 6 grand a year, somewhere
Okay.
in there. But I'm not sure if that's probably covering the liability as well as insurance for the building as well. So I'm just trying to see if that's, appropriate, too high, if that's what it,
Uh, do you own the building?
yes, I own the building.
Okay. And so, because in a case where you own the building, in my experience, you typically are carrying two different types of insurance. So a lot of times, we'll have our property insurance that has a general liability, um, you know, uh, I guess side to it. So you'll have
Right.
like the overarching property insurance, and there will be a general liability portion. Sometimes they're part of the same insurance. Sometimes they can be broken up, depending on if you have other tenants. But in most cases, that's that general liability and then that property insurance is going to be tied together more specifically in regards to the property itself, like if someone fell in your parking lot or something like that. And
Right.
then you would have a separate liability insurance policy that would be specifically for the adult day services. So I know when we have two properties that we own in both of our locations, and so we have this property and general liability policy that's specific to the property, but then we also have our adult day liability policy.
Right. That's correct.
Okay, so when you think about this 6,000, is that for all three, or is that
That's
just
for
for?
that's for both. That's for the general property insurance and then the liability insurance for the day center.
Okay, so that's all inclusive for all of it. I would
Well, it's
say, but
hmm no, I was just saying it was like, yeah, two policies, but kind of all together. All together.
right. So, yeah, but I'm just, the $6,000 for the year to me seems very reasonable. Now I am in Florida, and property insurance in Florida, is through the roof. So,
Right.
it's any like I'm sure everyone around the country would share their insurance, and it would be like, oh my gosh, like because I know ours, between our property general liability and then our adult day liability policy, our 3,600 square foot center, in Port Charlotte is running almost around 16,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
So in your experience, Christina, is what are your thoughts on, you know, I mean, I'm not sure if you owned your building or if you guys leased
I
it. I
did
forget.
both. So I owned my building, but I owned it as a separate entity and then I leased it to my adult day. So I had a separate policy as the owner of the building. And then the adult day, we had general liability and a professional liability. And 6,000 for the year for what we had is pretty close to what what we spent. I don't know who you're going through, but NADSA on their strategic partnership page which if some of you don't know what NADS is, that's the National Adult Day Association. Adult Day
Mhm.
Services Association. They have some on there. I know Lamb is one that has a lot of adult day experience. I think Cincinnati is another one that's on there. The thing with adult day, it's not like, a nursing home or assisted living. There's just not enough out there for like the underwriters to go in. And when you're a startup, it's going to be even more. So, the price for that is high, and hopefully after you get established for a couple years, it will come down a little bit. And then for another business that I have, I started using a company that's internet based called Next, Next, and
Okay.
I have an errors and emission insurance through that, and it was almost half of what I was paying through like Liberty Mutual or so it was the same coverage. So that was another option. I don't know if they do adult day, but if it might be worth looking into.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And one last thing I was gonna say too, I know when we opened I think both when we opened our Port Charlotte and our Sarasota location, when we got the insurance for the adult day liability, one of the things that we were able to do is we were able to work with our insurance company, where they could kind of like, taper up. So meaning, I think in say Sarasota, we were licensed, for 90 members. But
Mhm.
on opening day, we're not going to have 90 members, right? And so for
Right.
the first year, we were, really only anticipating up to maybe 45 or 50 members. And we were able to work with our insurance company where we could get like the insurance rate quoted at 50 members.
Right.
And then we would have to notify them if we went beyond that. But there was a way for us to basically limit the cost of that insurance, so we weren't carrying the cost of insurance to insure 90 members. We could spend that first year and really only have to pay for insuring 50 up to 50 members, even though we were licensed for 90. So sometimes there could be those those I guess I don't know what you call that. It's written into the policy, but there's a specific name for it, and if I can go back to an email that I got from our insurance broker, I could share that with you. But it might be something you could ask your insurance agent.
Okay, great. I do look forward to getting that information from you.
Yep,
Thank you.
no problem. Thanks for joining. All
Mhm.
right, we got. I don't know who it is. Maybe this is Mindy on the iPhone.
Yes. Yes.
All right, Mindy, go ahead and share your question with all of us. I know you wrote it in the chat, but feel free to share it out loud so we can all hear too.
So I've been open for a year and just kind of wondering where my census should be. We have 2 passport participants as of now. In my area agency, they have no adult day centers, so they are very unfamiliar. I had lunch with them, bought them a good lunch, and got in front of passport, but still to only have 2, I was hoping to have a couple more.
And Mindy, what's your license capacity and what's your average daily census today?
So we started out at 20, but I own a memory care home that I moved into the same building, which cut our capacity down to 15.
Gotcha. So your capacity is 15. And
Yeah.
are you saying on and what are you having on any average day as far as attendance?
Anywhere from 3 to 5 or 6.
Okay. And remind me where you're located, Mindy?
Carrollton, Ohio.
Okay. I'm sure just Christina, having worked with you probably knows more specifically about that area. Christina, what are your thoughts on, current census, where she should be and things like that?
It's hard because it's a little bit more of a
Rural
rural
area.
area.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things with, those area agency on aging people, you have to constantly go out and make sure that they know like you're there and keep reminding them that you're there because they're not familiar with what adult day can do and how it actually can help them. So, any of the programs that you're doing, Mindy, maybe share those. Like, find out who their marketing person is there, right? They have somebody who does their marketing, their events for them, and then email her and say, hey, at Bell's this, week we have this, we're doing a fall prevention, or we're going to do, this pop-up library, or, we have this person come in to talk, and just let them know like the activities that are going on in your center. And maybe she will forward those to the case manager, or say, hey, we have room available to take on a few new participants. The case managers that that have clients that could benefit, please stop in and check us out, see what we're about, that way. And then reaching out to, even though I always tell people, first responders in your community, they're the ones who see people who fall all the time. They're out there picking them up off the floor, out of the showers. So, they may know, go out to your, home health. Do you guys even have a home health company in your town, right, or in your county, right?
Not in the county. They're on 2 counties beside us, but there's
Right.
none in the county, no.
Yeah. And I can't remember, are you enhanced or intensive?
Enhanced.
Okay. So like, maybe just put that out there. They don't have a lot of caregivers to go out to do that. So there are things that you can do at your center to help because they don't have that home care agency in that area.
Yeah. We have a lot of people that can't afford $80 a day.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do about that either.
Is Mindy, is Passport, is that like Medicaid, or is that a
Yeah,
sponsor?
that is,
Waiver.
yes, the Medicaid waiver, yeah.
Got it. Is there, like, do you know what percentage of your population there is on Medicaid on that
Oh, I
Passport?
did. I don't have it at the top of my head.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Like, do you, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, for your area, for the area that you're in, would you bank that the majority of your members that, that like would be ideal for you, that are ideal members, are those that are on Passport, or?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And I do remember now, we have 300 seniors over the age of 65 on Medicaid.
Okay. Yep. And I guess I'm assuming that the majority of them are, like, living on their own, or is there
Yeah,
family nearby? Okay.
non-institutionalized, yes.
Okay.
So,
Do you have do they provide, is there
yes,
transportation available to and from? Okay.
yep,
Yeah, so
yeah,
it almost seems like, just due to the nature of your area, that, like, it's like figuring out how do we plug into those 300 Medicaid folks,
yeah,
just from a lens of kind of on our end, but I think there's some similarities when I think about, we're kind of more private pay focused, but a lot, in order for us to get people through our doors to see the place, I feel like we have to become a hub of education. So I know, like, like for us, when I think about, every single week we have a different support group, and it caters to different needs. So one's like Parkinson's, one is young onset, early onset, where the care, the family caregiver and their loved one they're caring for both come to that, and there's both a dual education and they separate apart, and then do their own thing. And then we have a Parkinson's focused one. So, like, anyways, we did that because now we're kind of speaking to the language of each of those situations, and able to offer a support group that's specific to their needs. I know, like, last week we did a a caregiver planning workshop, where we were talking with family caregivers about, in case of that emergency where something happens to you, do you have a plan in place for your loved one that you're caring for? Like, it was crazy because literally the day that we had that workshop, one of our members, like who had come here, we actually had to have our driver go help pick them up, like clothes and stuff like that, because the wife, who was the family care, the primary care provider, fell at home, was rushed to the ER. So it was just crazy because then she didn't have anything in place. So then all of a sudden the family, had to, the kids stopped everything they were doing, ran. It was just wild how that happened on the same day we were having this caregiver planning workshop, because in her case, she didn't have all these things figured out on like a what if scenario, so anyways, that caregiver planning workshop, I know today we did like a brain health seminar. So in your market, maybe you're, just, we're like, for us, we're always doing events and trying to be a hub of information, but maybe you could figure out a way to, like, cater more of your educational stuff towards Passport and maybe all the different benefits that it has to offer, where it could be education about Passport in general that people may not even know they have access to, certain services. And then a portion of that could be educating them on how it helps pay for adult day too.
Mhm. I know Passport in general is pretty strict with the people that they refer to hospice, or the referrals that they give in general. So, and we're getting there,
Right.
No, we're getting in front of them. I think it's just going to take, some time.
Well, it may be education on, helping people get onto Passport. Like, if, there
Yeah,
might be people that are living in your community that are not currently enrolled on the Medicaid waiver program that should be, but didn't know how to go about the process of applying,
yeah.
and maybe some education around that side of it.
Okay.
I know one time too, we did something for our case managers in our other location in Port Charlotte, and we did like a little like spa day, for them at our center, and so it might depend on your area, and it's hard for me to say exactly how I would do it, just not knowing how big of an area and how many case managers there might be that could come to something like that. But in this example, we had, like, someone there to do their nails. We had, like, just things to kind of pamper our case managers and care managers and give back to them. But it was a way for them to kind of come into, through our front doors, get to meet our team, and our team, was the ones that were helping, do everything. I think um the one person we hired out was like a massage therapist, but we had someone there doing yoga. We had the massage therapist. We had, like, someone to do nails, and it was just a way to get people through our doors that may not otherwise have come through. And we put together, like, a nice invitation to invite them. That was like a little, like, almost like a wedding invitation, like something really pretty, and that was intriguing when you handed it to them. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our problem is our case managers are over an hour and 20 minutes away. So it's hard to get them into this area, let alone, come for a spa day. So, like, I go to them, I
Yeah,
have
man.
no problem with going to them.
Just bring it. We'll bring the spot A to them.
Yeah, yeah,
There we go.
yeah. So,
Well, hopefully this stuff was helpful, and obviously, Christina is a wealth of knowledge beyond this call too. So.
yes, her idea of the free half a day or free day to come works wonders, because we get people that are resistant to come, to leave their home. They come spend some time with us and love it here. So that's been a really big help with what we're doing.
For
So,
sure. And I would just try in my head, I'm like, okay, how do we figure out how to get those that, can't afford $80 a day? Like, how do we get them qualified to go on to Passport,
yeah.
And you know what, Mindy, do you guys have senior levy there in your county?
Yeah, the Friendship Center gets, yeah.
All of it. So,
Yeah.
When is that going to come up for the next
It's probably 4 years, and they just got it last November.
Okay.
But I was passed over for another CDBG grant this time too. Um, it was crazy. The commissioners gave it to themselves. So,
Yeah. I sent you 2 messages. So
I saw that.
Okay. So
Yeah,
reach out to me.
will do.
We can talk some more about that.
All right, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Thanks for joining, Mindy. I believe next up we got Danielle. If you're on there.
I am in fact here. I
All
was
right.
going to ask about surprises. What is something that ADCs are often surprised with in terms of cost?
Like, from like you starting your own adult day center, and like the surprise cost you didn't expect.
As I work through a financial plan on cost and revenues, profit, things like that, just to make sure that I have a good understanding of the entire financials. I was curious, from your perspective, what is a cost that these folks that are starting up these new ADCs what's a cost that surprises them most often that maybe I haven't thought about or haven't planned for?
I can think of three things.
Okay.
And then I'll let Christina take you know uh I'd love for Christina's thoughts too on this, her perspective. But number one, I would say is underestimating the cost of construction and the time it takes to go through whether it's the planning process or permitting or the county or the city not understanding what adult day is and trying to throw you in this other category and make you get these certain um, have certain requirements that you're like, this doesn't even apply to me. And you're like, well, we don't have an adult day, there's no adult day zoning or adult day guidelines for, what is needed. So like they're, throwing you in a different category that, now you're having to go fight and figure that out or deal with permitting and, and that whole approval process being delayed for some reason. And then just the sheer delay of you've got this building that you're paying for and, every day that it sits there, it's costing money and maybe there's like delayed progress on construction or just the sheer fact that, hey, we thought the remodel was going to cost, 100,000 and it ended up being 200,000. It was double or even triple of what we had anticipated. The next thing I would say is if there's licensing in your state, I would say the amount of time it takes to get through the licensing process compared to what you think it should take. Now, there are some states that don't have licensing requirements. And, the second you get your CO on your building, you're good to go. And licensing is not even an issue, but certain states might have more stringent licensing requirements. And then the last thing I would say is the one thing that to me is probably the most underestimated lift or just issue I see in adult day is a lack of awareness. And so new adult day owners opening their centers and due to this lack of awareness of what adult day is, they didn't do enough pre-open marketing or they anticipated filling up or reaching capacity at a sooner date or earlier than expected. And sometimes when they open their doors and the lead flow is not as robust or as consistent as you would have thought in your projections, again, there's this maybe delayed growth period that like might cause additional costs or overruns because you're burning through cash each month, and maybe you underestimated the amount of time it would take to get to capacity.
Okay. Thank you. That's incredibly helpful.
And I'm going to say the same thing. I agree 100% with what Kris said. If he wouldn't have said those answers, that would have been my top ones. And I know a few people on this call that can attest to exactly some of those issues, especially the construction stuff. I mean, it's insane how some of these people have waited. If you have to have an architect involved and getting them in there and doing the drawings and it can take a long time. So those are definitely some of the things. And I think if anybody else on here could share anything beyond that, I'm sure we would love to hear it.
And the hard part too is like when you're thinking about opening up a center, like if for me and the way I look at this, like the only way to hedge against some of these like unforeseen costs and kind of like this black hole that just you don't know when the burn's going to stop is if you purchased an existing adult day center, like so if you were able to go into your market and there was one, it doesn't even maybe need to be for sale, but you could knock on some doors and kind of speak with different owners and kind of get a take on where they're at in their journey. And you might find that there might be adult day owners in your market that are potentially might be great candidates to sell their adult day center. And to me, like that's the fastest way to or probably the most cost effective way to hedge against these black hole of unknown costs. Because if you're starting from scratch, you from finding a building to completing the construction on the building to going through licensing to getting up to stability, that journey, unless you've done it before, is something that like most people just have no idea how long it's going to take or how much it's going to cost. And so sometimes those unknowns can be very intimidating versus, you buy something that already exists that, maybe is not what you want. Maybe it's not the maybe, it's more Medicaid focused. Maybe it's a little bit more run down. Maybe it's at 50% capacity. Maybe it's not designed in the way that you would want it to be designed or operated in the way that you would want something to be operated, but knowing that like, hey, I can come into this place, and I can, purchase it, like at a discount because it's not performing at 100% capacity. And, now I'm, able to step into something that's already up and running, that already went through all those headaches and all those delays and all that additional cost that was unforeseen. And you're able to buy something that like has cash flow, like how much revenue is coming in, what the previous owner has made in the last year, what some of the general costs are of operating that. And it's easier sometimes to then figure out how to you know how to acquire something like that, and then have a more predictable understanding of what you're getting yourself into versus starting from scratch and having no idea when the bleeding's going to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really helpful. When I've looked at locations and potential cost of startup, I have looked at existing structures thus far, just to
Yeah.
mitigate some of those construction surprises.
Yeah, and I think like I have a friend that he has 3 centers, I believe, in Minnesota. He bought them. They were already up and running, maybe operating somewhere between 50 and 60% capacity. And they bought those 3 and were able to get in there and refine systems and buy a few new vehicles here and there, and establish relationships with case managers, and get those locations to closer to 100% capacity. And then they made this big bet to go in and build one from scratch. And when they did that, it's been this massive undertaking that they just did not anticipate. And it's one of those things. It's a catch-22, because the hard part is, if you're going to go buy an existing adult day center, for the most part, the ones that exist that are already up and running are going to primarily be Medicaid focused. And so if your desire is to create a more of a private pay adult day center, there's not going to be as many options available for sale, because there's just fewer. Like I've always felt like when you look at the entire adult day market, 80% to 90% of them are primarily Medicaid focused, or they have a fund, they're a nonprofit or a Medicaid focused adult day center. And then the other remaining, that 10 to 20% might be more private pay focused. So the hard part is if you're going and you're primarily going to focus on the private pay demographic, there's less of a chance that those adult day centers already exist and they're up and running already.
Yeah, I would definitely want to focus on the private pay market. I think that sounds like much less of a headache, considering the medical coding, billing, extra hoops you have to jump through with the Medicaid.
Yeah, and it just depends too on the reimbursement of the state, because every state's a little bit different. But
Sure.
for sure. So and I think to someone else's point that was asking about the construction side, like when you can find a place that is already, like, the construction or the interior build out is more completed, like when you think about what you would have to do to the space, might just be minor interior walls. That's going to also speed up your timeline and reduce the cost of going through construction and permitting and all that other stuff. So,
Okay, thank you.
all right. Thank you, Danielle. Thanks for being here. And then we got another iPhone. The question looks like, any advice on setup as far as the interior design of an adult day center?
I'm sorry, it's me. My name is Lauren. I'm calling from Wisconsin. I'm in the beginning stages, and I was just I got everything as far as like the licensing as much as I could before getting the building. So now I'm at like just finding a building. So I was just wondering, once I get the building, is there any advice as far as setup? Obviously outside of the state regulations, but as far as like, I don't know, like decorations or how the center in general is just supposed to be set up.
Christina, how much of an interior designer are you?
I am not, but I will tell you, there are some books out there and information on person-centered care that kind of gives you some ideas about that. And Lynn and, oh gosh, what's the other I can't think of her name. They're the two, they were in NADSA, that they wrote the book on person-centered care. I can't think of the other one's name. But they have a book too, and they talk about setting up your center, and they also talk about using tables that you only have 4 chairs around, right? So we tried that, and you know what happened? Our people drug the tables together because they wanted more than 4 people to sit there. So, you just kind of like got to go with the flow. But when I do my presentation on starting adult day, I talk about like your design, that you want it to be warm and you want it to be inviting. So many of these adult days started in the basements of churches and hospitals and different things, and they're dark and there's not that natural lighting. And our center was very bright and welcoming, inviting. If you look at Kris's videos, his center, people walk in there and they're like amazed, right? They automatically want to like put their loved one in there because they feel comfortable walking through those doors. So think about that. And then also think about like what's going to be a fall hazard, right? So things that, may cause somebody to trip, or how things are set up. We set our center, and we probably had it rearranged 3 or 4 times after we set it up to figure out exactly, once we got people in there and bodies moving around there, how the flow is going to go. So, don't get too stuck on it has to be exactly like this, because you may end up changing it anyways. But yeah, just do some research on person-centered care, and you can get some ideas about that physical setup.
And I got like 2 tips I was thinking of as Christina was talking. One, I know in our first center we went with circular tables. I love the idea of like having everyone in a circle and to be able to be around the table and kind of all facing each other if we were doing an activity at that table. The only thing is that when you do circular tables, it's harder to move them together. It's harder to make a bigger table, or it just it doesn't, it's not as efficient with the like number of people you could fit into a space and how that space could be utilized. So in our uh, Sarasota location, we went with square tables, and it allows us to, and then we also kind of believe in this idea of an open concept. So, we don't have separate rooms for different activities. Like all of our activities happen in kind of like our big, we call it the clubhouse, and in that clubhouse area is like the big space that accommodates all the chairs and tables. And so everything from our live music, to our crafts, to our games like cornhole or basketball or chair volleyball, or exercises in the morning, or anything you could think of from an activity standpoint that we're going to be doing, even down to breakfast and lunch and all of our dining options. All that happens is inside this big clubhouse area. And then our separated rooms are more like administrative offices. We have a resting room, which really, doesn't get utilized all that much, except for the cases when someone's not feeling well, they're sick, maybe they're a little dizzy, or or they're maybe tired or exhausted after they've been here for a long day. And so they have that area to kind of rest. It's a little more quiet, that we can shut the door, we can turn the lights down in. And then we have like a hair salon, and an area for like PT and OT services, and then like your utility closet. But then the rest of our space is all open, and so that gives us a lot of flexibility. And we've always believed in this idea of being able to move our activities around our members. So if we're playing 3 or 4 different games at a time, instead of having to get everyone up in and out of rooms and to different areas, we can take that activity over to them. And if we're playing cornhole, basketball, and chair volleyball or something like that, we can just move the furniture around a little bit, or move the activities around and bring it to our members. So that open concept has allowed us a lot of flexibility over the years.
Good, thank you. I also was wondering, so if you guys could just give advice as far as the day to day, I know it kind of helps to like put different themes on like weeks and days, but as far as the day to day, what would that look like for like an average adult day center?
And when you say day to day, you mean like from an activity standpoint, or from operations, or like?
Right, so just like the whole operation. So when they get to the center, like is it, I know it's kind of like free, but I didn't know if there was anything recommended, like exercise or just things you can implement to keep it exciting.
Christina, you want to share a little bit maybe on?
I think it's going to be all different. I mean, like every center has their flow. Like our people, we had staggered start times. So, some centers, everybody's there at one time, everybody leaves at the same time. So, that's going to be very dependent on how your day is going to run. Some centers, everybody comes in and maybe they get like, a continental breakfast or it's coffee and current events as everybody's coming in and settling in and moving into activities. You know, um, and then it can flow from different things from there. And then, your staff knows that, they move from this space to this space, and then we're getting ready for lunch. Do people need to go to the restroom? Is there meds that need to be, things? Is everybody going to wash their hands before meals? After they have lunch, do we have to take bathroom breaks? Maybe there's some people who want to go and just kind of rest for a little bit and not start into like a real big activity. So you really kind of, I think, just got a gauge of what your participants are and build it around that.
And was it Lauren?
Yeah, my name's Lauren.
Lauren, yeah. So, I know like for when I think about our day, we follow a fairly kind of standard flow of the day in our center. So from like 8 to 10, we're people are coming in from 8 o'clock to about 10 a.m. is typically like the staggered start times are all within that time frame. And during that period of time, like as they're coming in, we're getting Mary her coffee and kind of finding out what she wants for breakfast and making something a little a la carte for her. And Bob walks in and we know he likes, this for breakfast every morning. So we're kind of making that for him. And as our members are strolling in the morning and we're helping to get their breakfast served and all that kind of stuff, right around like 9 o'clock is we might be having small talk from 8 to 9. Between 9 and 10, we're doing kind of like current events, so we're engaging our members in conversation with different current events. We have our activity program director puts together like a sheet that can provoke conversation. So from that 9 to 10 block, we're doing that. Sometimes halfway through we might, depending on what the size or our census between 9 and 10, we might split off 30 minutes, like around 9:30 to 10, and do some trivia or some different brain games. At 10 o'clock, we go right into the Pledge of Allegiance. We do the national anthem, honoring our veterans, and we do right around like 10:15-ish. We start in with devotions, and we also do kind of like the what do you call it? What are the signs? The Aries, Pisces. What do you call that? I don't know.
Horoscopes.
Horoscopes. So we do like a devotion, or we do the horoscopes, trying to cater to the different spiritual elements that our members might be seeking. And then at 10:30, we start we start our morning exercise. So from 10:30 to 11, we do a morning exercise every morning. At 11, we might transition, like, because we just did a physical activity, so we're probably transitioning into something was more of a mental activity. So it could be it could be trivia, it could be a bingo, or a different version of like a bingo style game that we play, depending on our theme. At 11:30 we might be rolling into chair volleyball. By noon, we're having lunch. 12:45 we're rolling into a little trivia before we have live music every day at 1. At 2 o'clock, we just got up and had everyone up and dancing and singing and enjoying themselves. So by 2 we're rolling into typically some sort of brain game type thing. 2:30 might be more physical. 3 o'clock we're doing our afternoon snack, and then 3:30 we're winding down the day from like 3:30 to 5, with a variety of activities that might depend on the census we have and the types of members and their cognitive level that they're at. So we might go down track A, track B, or track C, depending on who our members are at that time. So it's kind of a general, like, maybe high level overview of how we might structure our day.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I will go on to the next question here. Let's see here. Is does Jeffrey have a question for us? Jeffrey Yon, got any burning questions you want to ask? Maybe not. All right, we'll go on to, I got another iPhone Not sure who the iPhone is, but any advice for finding sources of funding? If anyone, I'm not sure who asked that question just because their name's not a part of it, but if you're still on, it was a funding question. I don't know if you had any more specifics as far as what you've tried already. I've always felt like, for those, that are starting an adult day center and starting a business for the first time, the SBA has a lot of loan programs that are fantastic for startup funding. If, that's not a possibility or an avenue that you can go down, then, really the next best thing is, potentially finding a business partner or friends and family. Let's see here, maybe Janelle. Janelle, are you still on?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Janelle, if you want to share your question with us, and then we'll do our best to answer here for you.
Sure. Hopefully you can. So I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and I know we are oversaturated with assisted living communities. But I have been doing some research about adult daycare and really haven't found like we don't have a very many of them. The ones that we do have are like attached to like the big companies and they're attached to like the continuing care communities or like the larger ALFs. Um, and I noticed that the independent adult daycares, like just through Google, are now closed. So it kind of makes me nervous in my area, if I'm even kind of doing the right thing, considering opening one here. I know that just listening to you talk to some other people talking about the marketing and the awareness of what adult daycare is and doing some pre-opening marketing and all of that. But I'm just wondering like, and I'm in like a research discovery phase. I'm like still deciding if this is something I want to, jump into. So I'm just wondering like if you have any advice on like how I can research of if people how aware people are in my area of what adult daycare is, if there's like really a demand or if they, if they go towards more, just straight to assisted living. Like I don't know, I'm just kind of nervous and, going back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, hey, at the end of the day, like the number one problem adult day faces is awareness. So, when you think about demand, like the number of family caregivers that are taking care of their mom and dad or a spouse, like it's extremely high. When you think about awareness and, are those folks aware that adult day exists? The answer, is probably that, no, they don't know. They don't know what it is. They don't know it exists. They don't know how it operates. They don't know if it's a solution for them or not yet. And that's the biggest thing that anyone opening an adult day center has to take into consideration is that your biggest lift, the number one problem you will face, it won't be permitting, it won't be construction, it won't be licensing, it won't be the layout of your building or anything like that. It'll literally be awareness, and the individuals that are the best at generating awareness in their communities, whether that's through, press releases, an all-star, a business development person or someone like that, like, it is, the number one problem we face is awareness. And it's just because of the fact that in the grand scheme of long-term care, there's 35,000 home care agencies, there's 28,000 assisted living and 15,000 nursing homes, but there's only about 4,500 to 5,000 adult day centers. So there's just a lack of adult day centers in the US compared to the other options. So families or case managers or discharge planners or physicians or neurologists, they don't even know that this is an option for them.
Yeah, and that's kind of, what I'm thinking. So, um, just
You
up
know,
here in Jacksonville,
Yeah,
because
no, Jacksonville's a great market. Florida's a fantastic market. It's the number two, it's out of all 50 states for the highest population and concentration of seniors over the age of 65, Florida's number two, second to California. So the need is definitely there. I know, in our little Port Charlotte center, which is like 3,600 square feet, we've served over 1,000 families since we opened in 2018.
mm,
So the need is definitely there. The demand for the services we provide is there. the ability to communicate that to the market and make sure that everyone in that area knows that you exist and knows that you're what you are, what you do, and and what adult day is really the largest factor to overcome.
Yeah. I think another issue that I think I might have too is, Jacksonville is so big and we're so spread out, is also just kind of determining where the location would be, what area. I know I've heard you talk about Medicaid versus private pay, which I haven't really decided on that yet. Maybe like a mixture, but it's just like we're just so it's just such a diverse group of people here because of how big we are. So I think that's another dilemma I might run into too also later. But I guess I'm just trying to get this motivation or this something like I just need some words of encouragement or something to go forward on this because it's something I really have
Well,
been thinking about doing for a long time.
no,
So
absolutely. I mean, Christina, I'd love to hear your take on it because I know I always preach that awareness thing. I mean, Janelle, if you haven't, get a copy of this book, the Great Care Crisis, because the entire book is
okay.
about adult day and the future of senior care being adult day. So, like in this book, all the concerns that you're expressing and this idea of like a lack of awareness that I'm sharing, like my whole thesis on how the future is really the future of senior care is adult day is really in this book. As far as getting a better, deeper conviction and kind of understanding maybe why adult day hasn't had its day like other industries,
Hmm.
but it's coming. It's just can you find the conviction deep within yourself to go take the first step, take action, and pursue this dream. Or is that conviction not strong enough where when things get difficult, like I might quit or give up? And I think that like being able to internally assess like how committed am I to this dream or this vision I have for doing this. If things get hard, am I willing to do whatever it takes to make it work?
Right. Yeah.
And Christina, I mean,
I
I don't want to
agree
hog
with
the.
that. Adult day, I always tell people you're not going to be a multimillionaire owning an adult day center. This is more of, something that is for a majority of the people who go into adult day, it's a passion for them, right? And they want to make a living and take care of people in that sense. So, and it can be hard, but no matter what business you start, it can be hard, and that's the thing with owning a business. People think you start a business and you're automatically rolling in money, and it's not. It's a big difference, signing, we don't sign paychecks anymore, but signing the back of a check versus signing the front of a check. So,
Hmm.
you really would need to have a good support system that when you're having days where you're struggling, that you have somebody that you can call and say, you got this, girl. You've put all this effort into it. It's gonna happen. Just, hang in there, So it's a great field to be in. I mean, if you care about aging population or IDE population, it is the funnest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I've
Hmm.
done a lot of different things. So it is the funnest thing being with those people. But being the owner comes with a whole set of different struggles, and that's any business you own. So
Right.
Yeah, and Janelle, when we started our location in Port Charlotte, it took about 2 years, for us to get to capacity. So, when we think about the time, from when we purchased the building, going through construction, going through licensing, to then getting to a place where, like we were at basically close to about 100% capacity. Like that was about a 2-year journey, and
Mm.
from opening day. So there's a 2-year journey like from opening day to capacity, and then there's that like year journey before it. So let's call it altogether 3 years before you're starting to see the fruits of your labor.
Yeah. Okay.
You
That
know, and
helps a
and
lot. Thank you.
and I think like it's like I know for me personally, like when we opened our Port Charlotte location and I saw our members like transform before my eyes. I mean, you could see them physically improving, cognitively improving. Their families' lives were improving. Like it was, one of the most incredible experiences in the healthcare field, because you don't get that kind of those improvements, or you don't see those those major improvements in people's lives really in any other healthcare environment for long-term care. And so seeing that change in people's lives really is what created the conviction I needed to bet all in on, or go all in on Adult Day. I mean, in 2021, we sold our assisted living facility to go all in on Adult Day. We rebranded to ActivAge. We built an 8,500 square foot Adult Day center. We bought this building here to be our future flagship or our future franchise headquarters. So we have an area next door that we can have our team to support our franchisees, and that we can bring people in here to train. So like I drank the Kool-Aid after seeing the impact that it had on our members in Port Charlotte. And then 2 years is what gave me the conviction, because at that point in time, we could finally see the fruits of our labor. We were taking care of, on our busiest day, we had 48 people in our little 3,600 square foot Adult Day center, with 12 staff members. And the place was just it was incredible. The energy was unbelievable, and just knowing that you can get there, and having and digging deep to know that, okay, like before I make this bet on myself, like how much do I believe in this being the future of senior care, or how much do I believe in this Adult Day concept, and if
Right.
I can dig deep, and there's a high conviction there that no matter how hard things get, how difficult it is from a financial standpoint, or even a leadership standpoint, managing a team, that I'm committed to seeing this vision through,
Yeah, that helps
and
a
if
lot. Thank you. And I'm definitely gonna look that book up as soon as we get off of the phone.
yeah, grab it's like it's inexpensive, and I think it'll shed light on where we are today, where the healthcare industry is going, the long-term care industry, and what Adult Day's role is in this entire long-term care field.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, and then I think Fanta had two interesting questions that I thought might be helpful. If
Yeah, I put a lot of stuff in there because I wasn't sure if we were going to get to Fanta's questions,
Yeah.
but if there's anything that I missed, or Fanta, if you want to pop on and address like any of my comments on there, feel free.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see your comment. I'm trying to scroll back to my question.
Sure.
um,
Oh,
and go ahead.
I'm sorry. So the question about the Front Street one, so I was asked, yeah, so I see that you're talking about the parking, the limit, the parking. So there is an Adult Day Center here in Georgia, but it is in a warehouse type of building. So I was thinking maybe that may be a little more cost effective because it's in a warehouse, kind of.
Yes. So yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things I'd say, Fanta, like in my experience, if you're opening a Medicaid focused Adult Day center, the location doesn't matter as far as the whether it's on a main road, or
Mhm.
whether it's off the beaten path, or whether it's in more of a kind of a logistics warehouse type environment. Like the location may not matter as much to those that are serving a Medicaid, like they have their primary focus or payer source is Medicaid. When you're private pay, it's a little bit different, because there's a larger majority of your families that are transporting their loved ones to and from you. And whereas in Medicaid, there's a higher percentage of those folks who are using some form of transportation. And so location may not matter, or visibility may not matter as much for those who cater to the Medicaid population versus those that are catering to more private pay.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. And I'm just going to be really quick with my second question. What are the must-haves in an Adult Day Center? Like,
Did you see my reply to that?
no, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I typed out a big one too. It's okay. Oh.
Yeah. Was
Okay.
this the I mean, Christina's the expert in that. She has like, the 72 must-have list that she, shares at the NADSA conference.
Yeah, it all depends on what your state requirements are. So if you read your state regulations, they have physical plant requirements. It may be a toilet to participant ratio. You may have to have showers. You may have to have a laundry. You may have to have a designated resting area. You may have to have specific green space. So, if you're talking about those, like for your example, sprinkler system, those are things that your state gives you those must-haves. Same thing with reaching out to the fire department. Depending on the building, you may have to have a sprinkler system. You may have to have a firewall. You may have to have an alarm. You're definitely going to need fire extinguishers. And then also your Board of Health. So if you're going to do a kitchen, you may have to have all commercial grade kitchen. There may be workarounds depending on what, if you're making your food there or if it's catered. So, those are your things. Zoning, like when you talk about a front street location, you got to make sure before you sign any lease that space is going to be zoned for adult day. And can you get a variance or a conditional use to put adult day in there? And then, again, like I said, with, the parking, that all may come from zoning as well. So, those are all the really must-haves when you start, is knowing those things, because you don't want to go into a space that you don't own and then, you sign a lease and now you need a sprinkler system, because that is a lot of money. And if, I know people on this call that had to retrofit a building for that. I had to do it with mine. And, you could be anywhere from 80 to 100 grand easily to do that.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the state requirements, are so different, and so there's so many variables, because some states are licensed, some are not. Every county's different. Some counties have information in regards to zoning that's specific to adult day. Some counties don't even have adult day as part of their zoning. Like they have to go research of, what classification of zoning can adult day fall under sometimes. So, the hard part is just doing that initial research on the licensing side, kind of, speaking with the zoning department, having the conversations with the fire department, and getting a kind of a general understanding of some of those must-haves based on these different entities, so, you got there's a lot of different, kind of hands in the pot that are, kind of setting the requirements for this industry. And so just making sure that you've done your research in those different areas. I've always said, like, when you think about capacity, there's like, three different entities that are typically like, limiting or setting requirements in regards to capacity. And, one could be the state, and what the regulations are as far as state licensing and, the number of square foot per participant that's able to be in a center. Then you could have the fire, marshal has a certain, requirement for the size of space and the number of egresses and ingresses into your space, and that could limit or define your capacity. The zoning department side, depending on what it's zoned for, might limit your capacity, because then there might be more, toilet per participant restrictions. And so you could have three different entities where it's like, well, the fire department said I could have this many people. The state said I could have this many people. The zoning department says I'm allowed this many people. So, it's important to, just do that research in all these different areas to really get a good understanding of, what are all these different governmental agencies, requiring of me. And then that way you can, when you start entering into conversations to lease a space, you're educated on what you need.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I know Christina put a lot of stuff in there, and let's see here, Christina. I guess that's a wrap for today, huh?
I would say, you
Yeah.
covered a lot of information today, Kris.
We did lot of good, very, love the, varying questions. I think, love having these calls, love hearing from you guys. Love everyone out there that's aspiring to open up their own adult day center, or already have, and they're in the journey of, getting to capacity and stability. That's why we do these calls is to be able to help out and provide some direction and guidance. And if you guys want any further guidance, any further direction, Christina does do consulting. She can build your operations manual, your policies and procedures. So definitely reach out to Christina for any of your consulting needs or policy and procedure needs. Christina, if you want to share just a little bit about what you do on that side.
Yeah, I put my contact information in there, but I consult all over the US. I've had clients in multiple states, throughout the US. So, I help them through, doing their business plans to, helping them look for space. I do lots of video calls and with them as they're looking at spaces to getting everything started that you would need for your adult day. I mean, I have all the policies and procedures, all the forms, everything that you could pretty much that you would need to get your center up and running. I can help with licensing or accreditation or whatever it is that your state requires you to go through. So,
And I know she's helped a friend of mine out in Houston, Texas, and built custom operations manuals for him. So Christina can do it all. I know she's helped people on this call too. So it's cool having Christina's fan club here. And if you guys just needed you just got a burning question and you just need an hour with me and we can talk through it together and really dive deep on your question and get you an answer to hopefully get you pointed in the right direction. You can go to adcpro.com and book a coaching call. Of course, we have tons of YouTube content out there. And we've broken it down by playlist. So you can go onto our YouTube channel and you can select the startup stage playlist or the financial playlist or the operations and licensing playlist or the marketing playlist. And there's different content and educational material on that channel for anything that you might have questions on. So definitely check that out. Make sure to join us next month, which is the second Wednesday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you guys so much for being on this call with us today, and we will see you guys on the next one.
bye everyone.
Bye, everybody. Take care. Have a great evening.